Two?
This is novel 2.
Number 2. Fina in the book is a private investigator.
Yes.
And in reading the book, I wanted to find out what makes this different from all the other private investigators novels that we have. And we start off first, she's a female.
She is.
And there aren't that many private investigators that are female. But what I found was probably what makes your book so interesting is just the initials, P.I. We have a private investigator who investigates not only for her work, but she investigates her brother, she investigates her family, she investigates people. It's a very interesting book. Tell us, how did you get started with this private investigation?
Well, I started, initially I had written an amateur sleuth series, and what I found was that that was very limiting because you end up with what I call the Cabot Cove syndrome, which is that you have bodies dropping in a small town and you can't really explain why that is. So I decided I wanted to make the transition to a professional investigator, and I enrolled in a program at the University of Washington in private investigation and earned a certificate, and that was how Fina was born.
Well, you know, in your book there are some other PIs. One is personal injuries. She is injured during the entire book.
Yes.
Tell us, how do you work that into your story?
Well, I don't think that just the men should be the ones who are engaged in fisticuffs, essentially. It's part of her job, and it's a big part of who she is in terms of being a Ludlow. They are a scrappy family. That's how she was raised, and she doesn't shy away from physical confrontations. I think people are often a little taken aback because she is a woman and she engages in the physical confrontations. I think if she's a man, if she were a man, people probably wouldn't think twice about it, but because she's a female, they are concerned for her in a way they might not be otherwise.
Another PI, parenting institutions. You deal with an institution that is the catalyst for all parenting, which is sperm.
Yes.
Tell us how you got involved with that, because that is a large part of your story.
I'd like to start with a concept that has a lot of potential for interesting questions, and I think that parenting and parentage is an area where there are a lot of opportunities. And I was reading articles about how this group of children conceived that way are coming of age, and they are finding that the lack of regulation in the United States is rather problematic. There are now men who are finding out that they fathered upwards of 75 children with a variety of mothers. And I thought that that was appalling and fascinating and posed all kinds of interesting questions that this generation that's coming of age will have to deal with. And I like thinking about things about nature versus nurture and what makes a family and what really matters in terms of parenting and family and the relationships between children and their parents. So I think that people can relate to it regardless of their own family dynamic or structure.
Another is people investigations. You got involved with someone who really wasn't interested in money, but was rather interested in a bodily part.
Yes. That's
Tell
right.
our
That's
viewers
right.
about that.
Well, there is a character who looks up her long-lost niece, and as it turns out, we won't give too much away, she in fact has a hidden agenda or a secondary agenda. And to me that was fascinating because I like books that ask questions that I then as a reader answer or ponder, think about. And I think it raises interesting questions about what would you do for your family member? What would you do for a family member who you've just learned is a family member, who you've just learned is someone to whom you're biologically connected? And I think that is something that people think they know how they might respond, and yet when they actually find themselves in that position, their response might be quite different.
You know, let's get back to your private investigator, Fina.
Yes.
She is probably one of the more active personalities. She goes from one situation to another 24 hours a day. But one thing that would be interesting to our viewers is that she's from this area.
Yes.
Tell us, you deal, first of all, entirely with, other than an exception or two, of the greater Boston area.
I do. Well, I'm from Marblehead originally, and when I was writing Fina, I had moved to the Seattle area recently, and what I found was that I didn't know Seattle well enough nor feel comfortable enough with the city to have that be the setting for the book. But I did feel that I knew Marblehead and the North Shore and Boston enough to do that in Metro West area. What I also found was that it allowed me to be home in my mind while I was writing, even though I was living in Seattle. So it was a really nice transition making that move across country, because every day when I was working in my head, I was still in the Boston area.
Before we go, another PI, provisions, institutions.
Okay.
You discuss food.
Oh yes,
particularly
the food issue.
Fina,
Yes.
who goes from junk food, then there are vegans, and then there are restaurants. It carries through your entire book.
It does.
Tell us about that.
Well, I love food, so it's something I enjoy in life, and I like to write about it. It's been very interesting to see readers' reaction to her diet. Some people are very critical, and some people wish they could have that diet. But I think part of great books take you to a place that you wouldn't necessarily go. I couldn't eat that way, and I like having a character who can.
Well, tell us if our viewers wish to follow up on this. Do you have a website?
I do. It's ingridthoft.com, and I can also be found on Facebook and Twitter.
Very good. Well, I want to thank you for
Thank
being
you.
on the show.
Thank you very much.
Good luck to you on your tour.
Thank you for joining us tonight. This has been the Smoky Bacon and Dick Concannon Show.